a life coach?
No.
Neither have I, but I'm hearing more and more people saying it's so important to get an external, objective perspective into your life. The gentleman who's here today is a life coach, so I'm looking forward to that conversation.
Sounds interesting. How do you become a life coach?
This is Visionaries. Hello to you and welcome. As the saying goes, the pen is mightier than the sword. Words can be used to build, but also to destroy. My guest today is a motivational speaker, an author, and a life coach, and he chooses to use his words to change lives for the better. Help me welcome Elijah Padi. How are you doing today? Welcome to Visionaries.
Fabulous, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming. Mjidawako at Richville.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about growing up at Richville.
Wow, what a very challenging place. We grew up in the times of the uprising, from the 70s until 1984 and so on. So, growing up there as a young man wasn't very easy. You had to, maneuver between poverty, you had to maneuver between, brutal treatment by the cops at the time, as well as family conflict. There was a lot of dysfunction growing up, and one becomes very nervous and confused as to what the future is going to hold. But we made it eventually. Here we are today, trying to be better people. The biggest challenge is having to undo the effects of those time growing up within the townships, because it was not necessarily a conducive place for a young man to grow up, but we made it, and we're happy we're here.
And sometimes you had to take matters into your own hands to try and gather resources or make money. Talk to us about that.
I think the biggest challenge is that, at the age of 5, I found myself having to knock, door to door, trying to sell things to people in order to make a living. We were not well off at home. My mother didn't really have much, and she was a single parent at the time, and we had to learn to adapt quickly in order to help her, to make a living, because we knew that if we don't come together as a team and we allow her to do it on her own, it was going to be difficult. So we had to also chip in at that age to go around saying, we're selling this. And the challenge is sometimes, you get robbed in the street, trying to sell, fresh produce at a time. But we made it, and hence I say we're here.
It must have been difficult. I mean, you're a hawker. You're 5 or 6 years old at the time.
Exactly.
Really difficult.
It's sad in a sense that you become a parent. By the time you have to be a child, you have to develop a very strong character at the time, because you are meeting people of different calibers. Some people are good to you, some people are helping you, but some people are there to just destroy you. So at the time, I had to adapt and become a very strong person. But also the other challenge is that you don't necessarily become a strong person because you grow in a very violent society that also turn you to become violent in essence, because you have to always protect yourself. Now, sometimes you start to become emotionally violent without even realizing it as a child. You only look back when you're old to realize that, this time of growing up has actually caused this kind of scars, so, and most of us, we don't realize that until we are old, and hence I'm doing what I'm doing today. It's as a result of what happened to me when I was young, and I'm trying to help other people not to go through that.
Because oftentimes, we develop very interesting coping mechanisms, and sometimes it is to lash out. But I want to know about the home environment. Maybe talk to us about your siblings. Who was at the house at the time?
There was a lot of people, if you can imagine, it was about my mother, the aunt, the uncles, and their children. So everybody was there, and we knew that we had to find a place to sleep. If you don't get home on time, you're going to sleep in the kitchen, So it was not about this bed belongs to this one. It was about who comes home first or who's there first. And even when it comes to food, it was the same thing. So it was a whole lot of us in the same place. And I think that's also where problems start within families, because you find that the aunt is taking care of her own children. The uncle is doing the same, and your own mother is doing the same. So that in itself of create conflicts between parents and as well as
There's the
children.
inequality.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's inequalities already, you know, and you try to make relations with everybody else, but you can see how parents try to protect their own little, you know, heaven, and the same happens to us as we grow up, because we start having to say, you know, your parents love you more, they love me less, so therefore I can also show the same treatment to you if I choose to, you know. And as much as we try to be children, but you find that sometimes parents don't know better.
Yeah.
You know, instead of them creating a synergy between the children, they create divisions.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so it becomes difficult, because then you grow up with these coping mechanisms. You don't realize that you've got issues, but you do have issues, and then you find yourself suddenly bursting into, you know, emotional, you know, breakouts, and not
Yeah.
knowing why this is
Yeah.
happening. You know, and as you grow up, you might become a very defensive person, and that now causes problems when you start to have intimate relationships, because you go into this relationship with these mechanisms that were created in your family of origin.
I actually have a picture of you, and I'm not sure if it's your siblings or your extended family members, your cousins. You don't look very happy at all in that picture. You're the little one at the corner there. And Karwala, I can show you maybe no sabatlu shoot a snap. What was going on there?
Wow. You know, this is yeah, it's me, it's
Yeah.
my brother, it's my other two cousins from my aunt. I was told that I was very, very afraid of cameras, honestly speaking, and I didn't like that, you know, growing up. You know, I think also at the time, you know, I was more like a mama's baby at the time, and for very good reasons that I only understand now, you know, when I'm old, that, you know, I was a different child at home. So my mother used to take, you know, a good care of me in terms of protection, in terms of where I should go. So all the time I would be with her. So anything that took me away from her, whether it was 1 meter distance or whatever,
Even
it
if
created,
it's for a photo.
even if it's for a photo,
Yeah.
so it created problems for me. So I had to always be next to her, you know. So that's why you see me crying in that photo.
Oh my goodness. And what were you like at school? Were you able to focus, especially with all the psychosocial issues that were going on around you?
Actually, I hated school. And I remember, you know, we didn't live far from school. And my mother would drop me there. And during break, I would run away from home. You know, so, and I did that for quite a long time, to a point that at some point I failed at school. But I was a troubled child, you know. I mean, from primary right up to, you know, just when I entered high school, you know. And I remember even one of the teachers said to me one day, you know, and at the time I was not even close to becoming a pastor or a priest at the time, you know, but I was so naughty to a point that nobody spoke well of me. And every time when they spoke bad, and I became bad, you know, and I believed that, you know. So, you know, one become a troubled child, not because of, you know, you don't like school, but psychologically you are a troubled child, you know, emotionally you are a troubled child. And no matter what the teachers do, you know, they will never get you right until at home can understand what you've been through, what you're going through. However, our parents never had time to understand that. They didn't even know anything. They had to wake up in the morning, go and make a living, you know. So I became a troubled child, and only when I was in high school, that's when I became a bit better. And I started falling in love with books at the time, and you know, and I made it. You know, I'm not one of the cleverest person, or intelligent for that matter, but I made it, and I realized that it is through persistence in following the books or studying or reading that, you know, makes you a perfection at the end of the day. And at that level, you know, I saw a very different future for our society. And at the time I was at school, and I realized that, you know, one can do something with this. However, I did not have the motivation at the time. I was just going, you know, by.
When we come back, I want to find out where you got that motivation from and what you did with it. So if you're just as inquisitive as I am, you're just going to have to stick around. We'll see you after this. Welcome back, and thank you so much for staying with us. Our visionary today is Elijah Padi. He's an author and a motivational speaker. Just before the break, he spoke to us about how he used to be Ndwadumela, an aggressive youngster who was so troublesome. Let's find out about his moment of awakening. Elijah, at what point did you realize, you know what, I actually can't live my life the way I'm living it, and something's got to give?
You know, when I was in high school, I got arrested, and I wrote a book, and I speak about it in the book. And, you know, it was at that moment when I realized that, you know, when I was in jail, I realized that I was not a criminal, you know, and because I was in there with men who've made bad choices. And I found myself among these men, and I realized that it's not that these people are bad people. It's just we're making bad choices. Now, the challenge with choices is we often hear people saying people should make good choices. It's not as easy as that, you know, because usually we don't necessarily make conscious choices. We make choices based on what is programmed in our brain, what we grew up seeing, and what our environment was programming us to become, you know, when we grew up. So school wasn't really my thing. I got to varsity and I failed my first year completely, very dismally so. But I went back and I gave it a try again, and everything went well. And, you know, I was actually interested more in studying, you know, the human dynamics. So I studied law, which dealt with human relations and you know. So it helped me a lot to open my eyes. It was at that time when I realized that, you know, I'm not necessarily a normal person. I'm a broken man, but not only broken, but a man in pain, you know, and hence I wrote a book called A Man in Pain. Because I was also instilling pain in other people's lives, you know, and I was breaking hearts, and I've been, you know, my heart has been broken too. So I realized that something was wrong. So I had to look into my own family and other families as well. Then I realized that, but something is wrong, because you see the same patterns. You see the same patterns of brokenness. You see people behaving in the same way that is so destructive. I said, something is wrong within the family structure. Something is wrong within the society. So it's at that point when I started doing research about what's happening in human dynamics, and I uncovered a lot of things. So I started writing blogs, writing articles there and there, you know, not putting them in the books, but while I was researching. And I realized that the reason why things are so broken in the society is because we don't have relationships with ourselves. You realize that if I cannot love the next person, if I cannot love myself, it becomes difficult for me to love the next person. At that moment, things had to change.
And you start writing books. I want you to talk us through that journey of how you decided, okay, I'm going to write a book, and how that a book became books, plural, became the second, third, and I don't know how many books to date.
Yeah. You know, again, I had to realize that everything in life starts with a relationship, whether we like it or not. And you know, I've been in corporates where you hear people saying, don't bring your relationship problems, you know, at work. And it's almost impossible, because those problems become the part of who you are. You know, they are you, they are inside of you, they're troubling you, you know. And I realized that the reason why we're having problems is because the relationship are broken. And where do they start broken? Within the person. So I said, if we can understand what causes those problems, and we can research and we can put them in a book, and we can say to the next person, read this and see how you can fit in within the book. And I wrote this book called The Relationship I Desire, you know, not necessarily, you know, relating to intimate relationships, but speaking about you cannot go and have intimate relationships if you don't have your own individual relationships. You know, you cannot give what you don't have. So it starts with you. Then the first chapter speaks about, you know, clearing the past clutter, because that's where the problem is. I was carrying a lot of clutter that I picked up from my family of origin, from when I was growing up, you know, when we get molested within the family structure, and how many people go through that. And I realized that if I don't deal with that and let go of all the anger, the pain and the hurt, you know, I'm going to go and give this hurt and pain I'm carrying to the next person.
So I'm looking at a picture of a collection of your books, and something tells me good as Pelilanga, even as we look there. How many books have you authored thus far?
Currently, I've got 7 books published, and I'm busy with the 8th one, a very interesting book. This book speaks about gender-based violence, and it's called Live and Leave, you know, meaning don't stay in abusive relationships. If you leave, you'll be able to leave. You know, this is you know, on a background of what has been happening with women being killed and so on and so on. So, and as church, we've been teaching people to stay in marriages, irrespective of how abusive they can be. So I realized that, you know, writing books for me is not about me being an author, but it's about me sending the message across. And if you read my books, there's no book of mine that I've written that does not speak to you directly. Every story in the book is tailored to speak to you. It's not meant to sell, but it's meant to transform your life. It's meant for you to look at it and say, but this is me. And for how long am I going to be in this situation? You know, and every book you read, the moment you put it down, you gotta find a solution to your challenges. It doesn't matter what challenges. It must solve the problem. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit now about maybe your personal life as you're going through this, because it's a lot of work to unearth some of that normalized trauma that you've been carrying. How do you respond then in your relationship with your wife? How do you respond in your relationship with your kids? Were you able to see some of that victory that you were hoping others to have in your own life?
Look, you know, it's not a situation where you wake up and you find yourself doing this right. It's an everyday training, exercise, learning, and so on. You know, even now in my own marriage, I still have challenges because I'm learning. And you know, and I said marriage is a journey. You know, even with my own children, because I mean, most of us, if you think about it, who taught us to be good fathers? Who taught us to be good husbands? There's no manual. You understand what I'm saying to you? And I say that the father who was supposed to teach me wasn't there, you know, and I had to find myself having to become a father that I don't even know what fatherhood is. You know, what do fathers do? You know, so there's so many things that I'm learning on a daily basis. I make a lot of mistakes, but I don't become my mistakes. I take the experience from the mistake and then I rectify it and then I move on, you know.
And I want you to tell me a little bit about how you have learned from your past mistakes and what exactly those mistakes were that has enriched your marriage at this present point in time, so that whoever's watching and is thinking, yo, you know, how can they get motivation and encouragement? Or maybe someone who's divorced and is scared to try again, or what, you know, that situation. Just talk to me about that.
Look, we do a lot of counseling. We do a lot of relationship and marriage education. And, you know, through research, you realize that, you know, couples that spend time together are more likely to grow together, you know, as opposed to growing apart. Now, we didn't understand this concept. We were told, go get married, bring a wife home. And most of us, we did it. We got married, we brought a wife home, and then we left, you know. She'll be home, she'll raise the children, and that's it. Very few of us understand the concept of partnership, you know, and that's why you hear people talking about 50-50 in a marriage. There's no such thing, you know, because in a marriage, you bring the 100%, she brings the 100%. And I think things like having fun with your partner, they create an environment where you spend time scrutinizing her, understanding her moods, understanding her needs, understanding, you know, her desires, her dreams, and the same applies to her. She learns that about me, you know, and marriage is a lifetime learning. You will never get to know the person, you know, until death do you apart.
Because it's very important, eh? The question is often, physician, who will heal you, you know, heal thyself. All right, and when we come back, I want to find out what the future has in store for you. You did touch on the extra book that you're writing, the 8th one. I want to find out if there's anything else that you have up your sleeve. Do stick around, and when we come back, we talk about future prospects with Elijah. Hello again, and thank you so much for staying with us. Life coach Elijah Padi is still here, and he's about to talk to us about his future plans. So I have your books here in front of me. We've got The Relationship I Desire. We have The Narcissistic Mother. Of course, you did speak about Leadership Starts With You. I'm interested in the one with your wife in front of in the front cover. She's gorgeous, by the way, The Woman I Am. You spoke to us about your future plans in terms of writing another book about women and gender-based violence. I want to find out if there's anything else that you have, you know, planned for the future.
Yeah, we've got to have a lot of things happening pertaining to relationship and marriage education. We're doing men's programs, we're doing women's programs. There's a program we're going to do that targets unemployed fathers, you know, within the townships, you know, to help them how to become responsible fathers and to be there in spite of their financial or economic situations. And we've got programs that speaks about men, helping them how to deal with anger, you know, anger management kind of thing. So we're going to be engaging them on different topics. We've got programs of women as well, you know, how to help them to become you know, better people for themselves and within their relationships, but also how to become assertive and how to understand what a healthy relationship is all about, and, you know, how to let go of relationships that don't necessarily serve you. You know, we've got teen programs as well. We'll be going to schools, doing teen dating education. helping our teens to understand the consequences of rape and teaching them what, their family of origins maybe did not teach them, and trying to help them to deal with past issues and, help them to become better people or better leaders within society.
And it seems to me like you work 24/7, 365. Other than the color run that I saw, in the picture with your wife, what else do you do that just relaxes and that edifies you and that gives back to your soul?
Look, I think what happened with me, to be honest with you, I mean, I've had a lot of time to do things that benefited me.
Yeah.
And there comes a time when purpose becomes work. And when work becomes fun, So we find fun in what we're doing. And we do a lot of relationship and marriage retreats as well. And then we meet with other couples. So we find fun there and trying to help couples to create better and fulfilling relationships. So we also play when we get there. And because you help people to realize that the issue that they thought was so important and huge, you just simplify it, and people realize that, it's not bad after all. So we also help other couples to play. I mean, in that color run, we also had other couples that we invited that came there, and they realize how easy it becomes when couples play, So we create fun around our work.
I now want to know, what has been the greatest part of your journey thus far? When you look at these books and you look back at your life and you say, this has been a long road for me, but one of the highlights is, what would that be for you?
Look, I think, if one looks at where I'm coming from in terms of the life I used to live, I'm one of the people who contributed to the societal ills. Hence I spoke about I've broken many hearts before, and when I looked back and I realized that God does not necessarily choose those who are perfect, and you go to the Bible, you see the same stories. You see people like Paul and what he used to do. He used to inflict so much pain within society that God has sent him to go and fix, And you wake up one day, you realize that this challenge is on your shoulder, and it becomes so heavy, you don't want to do it. But you say, but if God can choose me for this, therefore there's a purpose bigger than I am, and it's that gives me that highlight of my life that says, I become the chosen one, in the midst of all this brokenness. Therefore, I can create all things through Christ, which strengthens me. So I think for me, it was hitting the call, understanding the call, and become a visionary. Because what is a visionary? A visionary is not somebody who's got a vision, but it's the one who can understand the vision and take the vision, run with the vision, and remain consistent in the vision. There are so many people who have got the vision, but they're not consistent in it. And as a result, they fail at some point. Now, this becomes the BLV forever. Not for me. Even when I'm dead, somebody's going to run with it. Because why? It will live forever. That's why it's called a vision.
I feel like you've just summed up the entire show. You've given us a theme. It's not someone who just has the vision.
No.
It's about someone who understands the vision, who's faithful to the vision, and who sees it through. Aishem, I don't even want to ruin it. Let's leave it right there. That's your episode, ladies and gentlemen. I know, right? You can listen for another hour. I could too. Thank you so much for joining us. Elijah, thank you very much for coming. We've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. We'll do it all over again next week, my friend. Same time, same place. Do join us. Bye for now.
Life is full of challenges. At some point, you will realize that a lot of things conspire against you. It could be financial pressure, marital pressure, or maybe societal pressure. I want you to realize that when you are facing challenges, it is at that time that vision is born. Don't just sit and complain about your problems. Go out there and seek help. Realize that nothing will change unless you change.